Jeroen van Comic.nl op Wondercon 2023 in het zonnige Anaheim. Ik neem jullie mee naar het panel van Daniel Warren Johnson, waarin hij alles over zijn carrière vertelt. Alles wat je weet, wat je niet wist, wat je wil weten. Dus ik zou gewoon kijken. De komende 3 kwartier zijn helemaal voor jou.
Okay, here's my presentation.
Oh
yeah. Oh, there you go. Okay. That's fine. No. Well, you could look at this later if you want. Yeah, is my thing recording back there?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Thanks, Liz. Okay, well, here we go. I've never been on a spotlight panel where it's been just me.
well, this is exciting for me, maybe even more than you. I am Brad Gullickson, the co-host of Comic Book Couples Counseling, and I am here just to act as hype man for DWJ.
Yep.
And what I did.
People started applauding after that. And I mean, I think people know who I am. But my name's Daniel. My friends call me Dan. I've been working in comics professionally since like 2013 about. And it's really good to be here. And my original moderator fell through at the last minute, so...
You get me?
Yeah, I asked Brad to help out because I didn't want to talk about myself for a whole hour.
Could we gauge the temperature of the room, just like, you know, what's the comic that brought you all to this experience? Like, what was the first comic of Dan's that you read that made you a super fan? So, like, let's just run things down. So, should it be Space Mullet? Anybody that jumped in from the beginning, Space Mullet?
One person.
How about some of the fan comics, like Old Man Skywalker?
Yeah.
Lance is there, right? Murder Falcon? Woo! All right. Beta Ray Bill? Woo! Wonder Woman Dead Earth? Woo! Do a Powerbomb?
Yeah!
I like that one being the loudest.
What about Extremity?
Oh, Extremity! I missed Extremity. How dare me? Extremity? No.
Okay. Okay, so let me ask the audience here. How many people here are consider themselves like comic book creators or writers of story or artists? Like, show of hands, I guess. Okay, good. Good to know. Thank you. That's just for my own. Helps me cater to the artists out there. I see you trying to make make stuff from,
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah.
So, okay. We don't have the visual presentation.
No, it's right here.
All right. So you wanted to start at the beginning
Yes.
of your career and talk about things that you don't normally talk about.
Well, it did say artist spotlight. And
Yeah.
I figured there's a lot of stuff that you can hear me talk about in interviews, but as the farther down my career goes, the less I talk about the stuff that's in the rearview mirror, like way back in the rearview mirror.
So let's go all the way back to the rear view mirror.
Yes.
Before even the webcomic. Like, how did we get to that stage? Like, what was it like?
To the webcomic.
Yeah, to the webcomic.
Sure. Well, all right. So most people here will know this story, but I'll just tell a really quick version. I was first I was a hospital transporter after graduating with an art education degree in Chicago, and I did not want to be a teacher, so I pushed patients around a hospital for 2 years, and I actually got some good story ideas from that, but I was too scared to try and do my own comics or anything like that. What I was really into was digital art and concept art, like way back in the day. When I actually thought about doing art and storytelling, even as a possibility for a living, was back in college. My mom had gifted me the art of Lord of the Rings, the paperback, which had Alan Howe, Alan Lee, and John Howe, both of their art that was featured heavily in that book. And I was flipping through it. My mom had gotten it for me, and I said, I could see myself doing this for money. And my mom's like, okay, how do you get a job doing that? I'm like, I don't know. So that was my first kind of inkling. Like, I think maybe that there's a path in the entertainment arts in some way, shape, or form. Because before, when I say I want to major in art, I mean.
So what year is this?
It's like 2006,
Okay.
2007.
All right.
This is like this is like summertime after my freshman year of college.
All right.
Working at job at Friendly's.
So it's a possibility. People are being paid to make art.
Yes.
How do I become that person?
Yes. That was like the first like itch where I was like, I can see this maybe, like somebody got paid to make this art. Maybe I can do it too.
Then how did you do it?
Well, it's like this
Step
long
two,
winding road.
Yeah.
So it's me trying to figure out who I am as a person and who I am as an artist at the same time, which is, of course, as we all know, no easy feat. But graduating from college, you know, I didn't really know what that looked like, and I remember as I was graduating, I was like, well, I remember being really inspired by the art in Lord of the Rings, and I'd like to try to do concept art. So my friends all pitched in and got me Painter 11, which is like Photoshop's little baby brother, and like a tiny dinky little like Wacom Intuos tablet that I would paint on, and I applied to Pixar right out of college, and I got soundly rejected, and I was just kind of figuring things out, and to pay the bills, I got that job as a hospital transporter.
Yeah.
That just was literally $8.50
I mean,
an hour.
you know, I've always been inspired by how you just had to go out and do it. And I think that's like the lesson that every artist must figure out, is that no one's going to open any doors for you. You have to kick them down, or you have to create new doors.
Yep.
And so you're at that stage,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, I have to make my comic. Okay.
Well, so it was like kind of these cascading events in my life where I was like, well, I have to make art, I have to make something, but it wasn't necessarily comics yet, because I remember I tried to make comics in college and it was way too much work. This is insane, I have to be able to draw everything, like a pizza box and dishes and cars, and that was no good. So I was like, I'd much rather do concept art where there's just swords and epic mountains and all this stuff. And I still get to draw that now, but it took me a little while to figure out kind of how I was wired as an artist and person, and going back to my days as a transporter, I actually could kind of feel myself treading water around year 2, and I hadn't really gotten anywhere with the digital art. This is around year 2, this is like 2009 to 2011. And I actually met my wife Rachel in 2010, and we got married a little while later, and at that time I had gotten a job as an art teacher at a middle school that had literally fallen into my lap. And that was terrible. It was a very bad job. And it was so bad that after getting married to my wife, Rachel kind of sat me down as my first school year was approaching. And she said, you have to quit your job because I can't stay married to this miserable person.
Right. And so you're at a stage where you are hating the way you're making money. So you have to find a way to make your passion profitable. You have to monetize.
Well, and that's one thing that had never really happened before. I had never had somebody come up to me and say, well, we have a little bit of savings, let's put it all on the line and see
What
how
a
you
gift.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was like, well, maybe I'll try to do the art thing and also get a job at Starbucks or some sort of in between. And Rachel was like, I think we should just dive all the way in. And now, so I give a lot of credit to Rachel for, basically helping start my career, because not only then am I afraid of failing the world, I'm mostly afraid of failing my loved
Your
ones.
family.
You don't want to do that. So, July of 2012, June of 2012, I quit my job. We had a nice steak dinner. It was the last day of teaching, and the next day I started hitting my portfolio like so hard. I just did anything and everything I could possibly do visually to try and impress other people.
And when did you start to feel like this is moving in the right direction?
So I was just trying to make money, and I was like, the goal was to make money in a visual way, however possible. So if that meant like doing like really bad side banners of like tire like ads for like used car dealerships, I'd take that. I did like illustration for theater groups in Chicago, and one of the big wide way of approaching kind of this art was to do a comic, a web comic that I thought, well, I can put it up for free and see if it hooks anybody in. That was Space Mullet.
Yeah.
And that was the very first thing where I was like, comics have always scared me, but I'm I'm gonna just give it a try, see if I can do it. And I didn't know how to use a T-square when I started. I feel like I've said that a lot, so sorry if you've heard that before. You know a T-square, like that artists use, that comic book artists use to like make panels. So I'm over here, page 1 of Spaceball, like measuring like half an inch here, connect the dots on the side. Oh my God.
So when you look back on that now, like, how do you feel about Space Mode?
Terrible.
Do you?
I look at Spaceball pages now, and I just like sends like this kind of like shudder down my back.
No pride?
I guess I look at the intent of it and I feel pride, but the actual imagery and the storytelling itself, it's a little bit like nails on a chalkboard for me. Maybe give myself like another year, maybe I'll leave.
Okay. And everyone, I want you to start formulating questions because we are going to do a Q&A. So start thinking about things you want to talk to with Dan. But you want to look at your earlier career. You got Space Mullet now out there. When's the first time where you go? Not that you're like, okay, this is turning a corner, but like, I'm good at this.
So that's an awesome question, because that's what I was literally hoping that you'd ask something like that.
Yeah.
Because as I was kind of taking any and all jobs that I could get that would be visual and would pay me money, Space Mullet was the one that brought me zero money.
Yeah.
But I really did actively enjoy it. And I really enjoyed making it and trying to get better at it. But it just was not, there was no money there. And it wasn't until, I just kept I'd update it twice a week. And finally, in early 2013, people started to take notice.
Yeah.
Kind of on social media and things like that. And I started getting a little bit of momentum because
And what are they taking notice of?
The
Space
art
Mode?
mostly.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I'd take my favorite panel of the day and share it, and 2 times a week. And then finally, it was November 2013 that I got asked by Dark Horse to do EVE Online True Stories. Oh, here's Space Mode. So Space Mode's my first thing. Sorry, everyone. But, let's see, hold on. There we go. Okay, well, here's a little panel of EVE Online True Stories, a 16-page comic written by Daniel Way.
Yeah.
Way back in the day, and they needed it in a month, and a few things happened there. Get paid pretty well. It was one of the biggest paydays that I ever got, just like an actual artist. It was terrible. To draw, it was a terrible experience. There's nothing.
And you're just full on anxiety the entire time?
I wasn't anxiety, but I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. There's these in EVE Online, there's these ships that basically, if you imagine a pencil, they're long and skinny like this, and they move around like this, trying to fit that S into a panel of a comic book where everything's horizontal. It's impossible. And I'm trying to figure this out, and I'm getting notes from Dark Horse being like, hey Dad, can we have these ships look a little more on model? I'm freaking out. The lasers should be coming from the middle part of the ship, not the top of the ship. So, all that to say, I thought it was the best. And I actually tried I was like, you know what, it'll be faster if I do it digitally. And the first 2 pages I did digitally on Monkey Studio, and they took me forever. I just have to go back to the ink. I need to get back to what I know how to do quickly, and that was to draw with pen and paper, the old school way, and I got it done in time, and I got paid, and it was amazing, and it was really hard, but I was proud of myself. And I remember after that, this is just before Ghost Fleet.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Rachel and being like, comics don't pay super well, but I can see myself doing it. I can see myself getting enough work that I could help pay the bills. And she's like, okay, let's rock and roll. So, it's not like anything magical happened, but I had read, Donny Cates wrote a book about a drunk superhero. What is it? Oh my God, now I'm blanking.
Buzzkill.
Thank you. Buzzkill had come out, and I liked it so much that I just sent Donny Cates just a little friendly email below. And I was like, I thought this was great. Thanks so much for making it. And he sent me an email back, and like, I love Space Mullet. I was like, well, that's great. And we got to talking. He called me on the phone a few days later, and we just talked about comics. This is like November, December 2013, and sure enough, somebody backed out of drawing the Ghost Fleet that had been greenlit at Dark Horse, and Donnie asked if I wanted to do it. We did it. So here we go. The Ghost Fleet.
Ghost Fleet, you know, we've talked a little bit about it. You look back on that and you still have some issues with your Ghost Fleet work.
Well, so with EVE Online and with Ghost Fleet, this is something I've said before in interviews, but my foreheads are like skyscrapers. I'm not sure what happened in my like artistic career and growth that I felt the need to draw the forehead so tall. But now you're not going to be able to help yourself. You're going to read Ghost Fleet and be like, oh my god, look at those foreheads.
It's true.
Yeah, it's like you could on social media tag me, Dan, I found another forehead.
Yeah. And when does Alabaster come around?
Okay, so I finished Ghost Fleet with Donnie Cates, and it was a great time, and it got canceled basically by the time it came out because it did so poorly. It sold like a little over 3,000 copies or something. Ooh, it was rough. And we had to change the ending of issue 6 to make it 2 issues shorter. And then the second half only came out digitally on the Dark Horse app, which approximately 0 people had. This is like Comixology people were excited about, and Dark Horse is like, we have an app nobody's using. And came out on the app. People were like, whatever happened to Ghost Fleet? I'm like, remember that Dark Horse app? I'm like, oh yeah. I'm not talking about it anymore. So it did eventually come out in print, which is great. And I'm still very proud of the Ghost Fleet. And it was a great working relationship with Donnie. And then that led into no work at all. I could not find any work. I was like rolling. I felt great about the Ghost Fleet. I was still working on Space Mullet. That also was not providing any income yet. And could not get any work anywhere. I didn't know what to do. Nobody was really offering me any jobs.
And how long was that period?
That was at least a few months, 3 months maybe. It was getting to the point where I was like getting a little sweaty when it comes to like paying the bills. I just had no real direction, and I found myself kind of at a loss without a writer and on a boat with no paddle. And along then came Dark Horse offered me Alabaster, which the good, the bad, and the bird.
Yeah, and Alabaster feels like a big turning point for you.
Alabaster was it was a huge turning point for me because it again helped me kind of figure out who I was as an artist a little bit more. The whole project was pretty darn tough.
How many people have read Alabaster?
Okay. Well, right on, bro. So here's what I'll say: like sometimes you have great collaborations, and sometimes you have collaborations that are just a struggle. It's just the way it is. And Alabaster was a struggle, and for whatever reason, it was really, really tough. It was really tough. I was getting notes back on stuff that I worked really hard on, like things like the tree bark maybe didn't look right, and I'm like, it's tree bark. And then when you get notes like that, you can't help but die a little inside. It's just what happens to me as an artist when I'm killing myself on something, and then I get notes back like that, and you just like sink into yourself a little bit, and you're like, what am I doing? And I know the questions come, and the second guessing, and I found myself thinking like, I don't really think I want to work with writers anymore.
Yeah.
So,
that's a huge takeaway.
it is. I mean, well,
Collaboration's evil.
what I found was that the chances of working with an amazing writer are very high, but there's still, even if every project I had worked on with a writer had been amazing, there's still at the end of the project here, all of a sudden, there goes the paddle again. Like, the agency is taken away, I felt. And especially after Alabaster, I was very burnt out on making comics and just trying to figure things out, which leads to, Green Leader, which is, as Alabaster was coming to a close, I was starting to experiment with writing more of my own stuff. So I had written Space Mullet, of course, but it was, I didn't know what I was doing. Like, there were times where I didn't know how to finish the story in Space Mullet, so I'd make a knife fight go like 5 more pages just to figure out the story beat by myself one time. As my writing process of Space Mullet. Don't know what to do. Makes fight seem longer.
Yeah.
And then, as Alabaster was coming to a close, and I was very burned out, kind of discouraged, I was like, what if I just tried to have fun again? Just to have fun again, making comics. And I had this great idea. I've always loved that scene in Green Leader where the A-wing pilot flies into the...
Yeah, Return of the Jedi.
Thank you, sorry.
Yeah.
It's like the best part of the trilogy for me.
It takes down that Superstar Destroyer.
Oh, so good. And it stuck out to me. I was like, what if I just expanded on it just for fun? I had quite a few comic pros and my peers being like, you shouldn't do that. You should like do something in image. You should make your own thing. It's like, no. I just got to get this out of my system. It's going to be like 12 pages, and it's just going to be amazing.
Yeah,
I'm just going to feel really good.
And there's
about
no
it.
worries about like, well, you're just doing a fan comic.
Yeah.
You're not doing like any licensing stuff. So you just
Yeah, you know, like I wanted to like prove how good I could do it. You know, I felt really good about it. And here's where like another turning point for me, like coming out of Alabaster and kind of this like very like ragged kind of down and out way. I really felt like I needed to. I don't know what the word is. Like,
you need to show up. You need to like.
well, you know what it was? I was like, if I don't want to be without a paddle, I gotta freaking carve my own paddle.
Yeah.
And Green Leader was one of the ways that I did that. Just a 12-page comic, but it did the job. I mean, it reminded me how much fun that drawing comics could be, and how effective story can be. I mean, there were a lot of people. It was like really short, but I remember.
And it drew people to your table. Like, we got to find you at your con now because we need this comic.
That's true.
Yeah.
And it drew people to Space Mode as well who wanted to read Green Leader. I just threw it up on Space Mode just for free, and it kind of became this like, I guess you could call it like a cult hit. But it was I just did it for fun, and that kind of led into. Oh, the slideshow's over. I ran out of time this morning. I was like just came out of the pool, and I was like, I should probably exercise. I think I'll finish this later, and I never did. After Green Leader, during Green Leader, and sort of during Alabaster, I was like, I really need to start working on something long form, and figure out if I can really do this. That's a little separate from Space Mullet, and a little more like professional, I guess. And that's how Extremity was born. After kind of the success of Green Leader, I was like, it's time to go up one more step and really try and write and draw and let
Green Leader
people know.
gave you the confidence to do it.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Like when I'm writing my own stuff and I believe in the story that I'm telling, every single line that I put on the page, like, it feels like it really matters.
Yeah, and you were getting affirmation too, in a way that you hadn't been before.
I was, but to be totally honest, like, I felt, it's hard to explain like how good I felt making Green Leader. Like every single page was like an absolute joy. Like it was an absolute joy. And of course that's not every day when making comics. But when making a story come to life that I have written, there's that joy there. There's like that spark it gives like every micron mark. You're like, okay, this is for a reason. Drawing a huge stadium full of people. Like, I'm not doing this just to draw a stadium full of people. Like, I'm doing it to make
There's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with you. That's so many faces.
But, you know, there's something wrong with me, right? But it's like, there's something wrong with me. In order, it's for a goal. It's all for a goal, and I have it here. And that's where I learned how to do that with Green Leader, which then led to Extremity, yeah.
All right, so Extremity.
Yeah.
Joy all the way through?
No.
I'm sensing a theme.
Well, okay, so like Green Leader was like 12 pages of just like A-wings, and the plotting was perfect. Short stories are really fun because you can like come in late on a scene and end early and still have people have just as much effect as if you wrote this like 100-page epic. The kind of ebb and flow of like a 12-page series, it's no joke. And Extremity was really tough because I was trying to write a revenge story that didn't really end in revenge, which I don't know how many people here have read it, but I'll try not to give anything away.
Well, I was talking with some folks earlier today about you like to subvert. Your endings never necessarily go where you are pointing them to go.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's like a little bit of an antagonist in you? Or is that just a natural storytelling? That's how stories should go. You should always subvert at the end.
Well, I feel like as a whole, I don't want to make too many big generalizations, but I feel like genre fiction has a bit of a track record of like giving you what you want a little too often. And I do like trying to do something that I feel is different. I don't always get there, but something that I love when I read stuff is things that surprise me, and I want to see that more in genre fiction. So that is a goal, yeah. But I think it's coming from a place of positivity, and Extremity was that first venture, and I partnered with Skybound for the first time, and that was a good experience and helped me get kind of the financial floating that I needed to get into different comic book stores and to get known as a writer-artist. Because that was another thing, the more that I would draw for other writers, I'd get to be known as the guy who draws for writers. I wanted to be known as the guy who just writes for us and stuff. So Skybound helped me do that with Extremity.
And now when you look at Extremity, are you
Incredibly proud.
okay? Yeah. That's huge, right? Like that should be a round of applause. I don't know. Yeah. No, you should feel good.
Thank you.
So much of this story so far has been like, oh my God, what garbage.
I mean, Extremity is one of those things where there are so many lines on the page.
Yeah.
And this is before I had children, so it's so much effort. I really felt I was trying to prove myself on a bit of a larger stage than Green Leader or Space Mullet or Ghost Fleet or Alabaster. I was like, okay, if this is what I want to be doing, I have to really push. And in the same way after teaching, where I was like, okay, this is what I want to be doing, I gotta push. I need to prove to people that I can do this so that I don't have to do this other thing that I'm not enjoying at all. There was like another version of that after Alabaster where I was like, okay, I really didn't enjoy that process. How can I get to the next thing? And that's writing for myself. So then Extremity was like that grind again of trying to get that in place.
And then like from our perspective, since Extremity, I mean, you've been just going.
I guess so,
Yeah. And I'm sure there's peaks and valleys in that.
Oh, yeah.
But it seems like you're on a pretty big peak right now.
We'll see. With every peak comes a valley.
Yeah. Okay.
What did I do after Extremity?
After Extremity is
Murder Falcon.
Is Murder Falcon? Yeah. Murder Falcon, like that's the book for me where I like lost myself in that book, and you go into it and you're like, oh, this is awesome. It's Murder Falcon. It's metal as hell.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, and actually not even by the end of it, like 2 issues in, I'm crying a little. 3 issues in, I'm super crying. By the end, I'm bawling. And you're a very emotional writer, and you put, it seems like a lot of experience of yourself and emotional experience into your stories, and it resonates.
Oh gosh. Well, I think the big difference between Extremity and Murder Falcon was Extremity, I was writing about characters that, were quite far away from myself, like as a person, and with obviously experiences that were very far from my own experience. I was inserting my own self into those stories in Extremity, but there's a distance there, which grew to not a distance the closer I got to the characters, but it took a while. With Murder Falcon, it was kind of like if you just took myself and you just like pasted it onto the page, you basically have Murder Falcon. And during Extremity, I was having really a lot of physical problems with my body that were going on, a lot of chronic pain, and going to the doctor all the time, terrible shit. Sorry, I can't say it. Just like a rough time, really rough time.
There might be some people under 18 here.
Oh, sorry, under 18 folks. It was a rough time. I was having such a good time making Extremity, but my physical body was just not having it. And so I was kind of channeling that energy into Murder Falcon. So it is very personal. And it's funny if like, those are some dark times. This is like 2016. Like, if I hadn't gone through those, there's like no way I would have made Murder Falcon. Yeah,
I mean,
there's funny to say.
There's a lot of hurt in Murder Falcon.
Yeah.
And are you surprised by how it connects to your audience?
A little bit. I've had a lot of people come up and talk to me about how much Murder Falcon has meant to them, and I've talked to cancer survivors and people that have like gotten together with their old bandmates after breaking up. I've had people that have shared Murder Falcon with their parents on their deathbed, like crazy stuff, and I'm like, this is Murder Falcon. Your name is Murder Falcon. Like, how is this happening? Which honestly, I think just it doesn't speak anything to me, but just the power of story and like, I don't know, it really encourages me when I hear those stories, because something like Murder Falcon, it can like cross these like huge divides of like people that I don't know, of like, you know, a different part of the world, a different race, you know, and there's this connection that's happening over a story. It's pretty special. It's incredible. It's like a small miracle every time I hear one of those stories again and again and again. It's like the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, so that's like a, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna check the time to make sure we're not going over.
No,
we're half hour.
Yeah, but we should be getting to some Q&A here soon.
Of course.
Yeah. But after Murder Falcon, I mean, like that's like a huge leveling up.
Sure.
And like, you know, some other companies are starting to pay attention.
Yeah, DC.
Yeah.
DC called me, Andy Curry. I'm looking at the sky like he's dead. He's not dead. He does not work for DC anymore. He was a fantastic editor. He called me up. He's like, why don't you do something at DC? And DC had asked me to do a lot of stuff in the past, but it was always to be an artist, not a writer. I was like, guys, love you. Call me back when you have me some writing and drawing gigs at the same time. And finally they did. And they asked me to pitch them stories, and I just pitched them anything and everything, like rated X Dial H for Hero.
Yeah. Into it.
Which they said no to. Shock. And I pitched them podcast wrestling with his Christian faith after finding out there's aliens in the world. They said no to that.
Hold on to that idea.
I know. I know. Oh my! It was going to be awesome too. It sounds really boring, but I was like, there's a surprise. You know, it's like you never know what'll happen.
Hold on to that.
So then Andy finally was like, look, we're looking for maybe your take on more A-list. I think we want to sell books here. And I was like, you got it. And I told him, I was like, let me think about it for a little while. And sure enough, I thought about all of the stories that have been told with Superman and with Batman and the kind of history those characters have had, those two characters specifically. And it was too intense. I was like, I can't touch that. I got to back away. Or figure out some other way.
Like too intimidating.
Intimidating. And like every time I think of a Batman story, I'm like, well, Dark Knight was better than this.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Or if anything, it's like it's not far enough away from like the Dark Knight Returns that like I can say this is worth reading. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So you do kind of like the Dark Knight Returns for one.
I guess so, but I didn't think of that way. One of those reasons is like at the public library, like Dark Knight Returns was one of the first ones I ever read.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind. So I wanted to make a Wonder Woman comic because it felt like the canvas was a little more open. Like there was maybe more of a white space in the corner for me to try and tackle. So, and they didn't know that I was going to give Cheetah a cheetah hand until I drew it on the page. And poor Andy was like, "Oh, I see you've drawn Cheetah with a cheetah hand." Okay, great. Send it off to print. So crazy.
And is that the extension of the notes that you got? Like how stressful was it working within that system?
It was a little stressful. I remember they had very specific notes. This was right after Bad Dick, when I was writing the outline. So before I wrote a sentence, Andy was like, no sex, no nudity, nothing. He's like, we're under some intense heat right now. And I was like, I got you, no worries.
Yeah, that was a moment.
It was a moment. And it's funny because I was really excited about it. Has anybody here seen Eastern Promises?
Yep.
Yeah,
It's a good
that
movie.
fight.
Yeah. I was going to have a all-female version in like a Greek bathhouse of Eastern Promises, like Wonder Woman. But like not sexy or anything like that, just like total, absolute brutality. And that obviously didn't happen. I still like it's an itch that I can't scratch. But they did let me have, Wonder Woman kill the entire world and use Superman's skull as Spider-Man. So What? I can't believe I got away with that still.
I don't think a lot of us could believe that you got away with it.
I asked Andy to send me an email as soon as the book actually was at the printers, unable
To make sure.
to turn it back, and he did. And I had some champagne. And that was during the pandemic too.
Right?
And it was around this time that I had been watching wrestling a bunch, and I really wanted to do a wrestling book. And I had some ideas and some inklings, and but the pandemic was still raging. This is like middle of 2020, and I was going to. When I was still working on Wonder Woman, I talked to Marvel about doing a Beta Ray Bill book, and because of the pandemic, they said we gotta hold off. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. But okay, that's fine. I get it. So, and I was gonna possibly do a Beta Ray Bill book at Marvel before I did Wonder Woman. But I decided to do Wonder Woman instead just because it was a little bit more of a, here's Beta Ray Bill, like here's Wonder Woman kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like no offense, Beta Ray Bill, but like, way up here.
Right.
So it's like, let me try to do the Wonder Woman thing. Then I came back to Marvel and they're like, pandemic, yellow light, give us a little bit. And I finished Wonder Woman and I'm kind of like twiddling my fingers. And I was a little worried to break out on my own at that time because of the pandemic and the markets and all this stuff, finance stuff. So I just decided I'll just email Marvel one more time just to see if they're into Beta Ray Bill. And sure enough, they're like, hey, we were just talking about it. Let's do a Beta Ray Bill book. And that's how Beta Ray Bill was born, which was really cool because like I emailed Marvel and I said, I'd like to do a Beta Ray Bill book. And they said, yes.
Kind of wild that happened at all. And that's also when you discovered wrestling and you started incorporating a lot of your love for wrestling into Beta Ray Bill. And it's all building up to Do a Powerbomb. And before we go to Q&A, I just want to give a little love to Do a Powerbomb.
Thank you.
I know nothing about wrestling. I didn't like wrestling. It wasn't my thing. But it was a Daniel Warren Johnson comic, so I knew I was going to love it. And you did that thing, you get to those last few issues, and you absolutely destroyed me.
Thank you.
And if I even think about that last page, I will start crying, so let's not do that. But Do a Powerbomb feels like a culmination of something.
Sure. Of what? What do you think?
Of you!
And also, Do a Powerbomb was my first book in Image, totally not with any support from Skybound or anything like that. So I still completely own it, and it is something I'm really proud of. And I can't believe I pulled off that landing.
Yeah.
I still don't really know how I did it,
And you knew that ending. We're not going to spoil this,
That's right,
right?
yeah.
We're not going to spoil this, but you knew that ending from the beginning.
I did. 15, thank you so much. And you want to talk about peaks and valleys? I'm in a valley now.
Yeah, I know.
This is where do you go after that?
Yeah, where do you go after that?
Yeah, I do have Beta Ray Bill ideas. I do. I can't talk about what's next, but I want to. I'm doing a 12-page.
No one will write about it here.
I'm doing a 12-page short story in that Darth Vader.
Yeah. Official Star Wars comics.
Finally.
Yeah.
And you come say hi to me. I'll show you some art from them after. If anybody wants to see on the iPhone, I'll show you some panels of just Darth Vader. I'll just give you a few story points right that. So Darth Vader. Okay, we open on a Star Destroyer approaching the planet. Commander, we found the rebel base. Shall I send our ships? And the big commander guy's like, no. He was very specific in his instructions. He wants to do this on his own. Turn the page. Rebel ships just getting blown up everywhere. Just people screaming, crying out for their mother. It's terrible. But there's Vader's tie advanced, right? It's just kill him. And finally the rebels are okay, we can all shoot at him at once, right? Very technical speed. And they knock out Vader's lasers. And they're we got him. And there's an A-wing pilot, I'm going in for the kill. And it's a really great shot. And then Vader just chokes him out. It's so he's in his tie and the other he's in his A-wing. The A-wing pilot's just and like green, blue leaders like blue two, pull up, you're gonna blows right into an X-wing that also blows into another X-wing. And what I wanted to do originally was have Vader just like force crush all of the X-wings at once. And Lucasfilm was like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
How many pages?
There's 12 pages.
12 pages.
No, it's a good time. You know what was really cool? Lucasfilm gave me other options of things I could do, which were just as cool. So I did that. So that comes out in May or June.
Yeah.
Let's go to
Let's
some
watch
Q&As.
Boom.
Yes.
I think you're probably one of the best commission artists currently working today.
Probably.
And as somebody who doesn't like to write or draw for writers, do you ever get commissions you're like, I don't want to draw that. What the hell is that?
Yes. One thing I found though is if I can keep an open mind, I usually will actually learn something like about like character design. Because if I'm like turning away from something, that means that I'm not good at drawing it. So short answer is yes. Next. Yeah.
One of the things that I love about you as a creator is the passion, the velocity, and the heart of pretty much all of your stories.
Thank you.
And specifically in the way that you do your action, I was really curious how you developed like your sense of pacing and angles and like foreshortening and just like the translating, fight scenes, the choreography into like, the stuff that's in all of your stuff.
I stole a lot from Shiro. Shiro, who did Appleseed, Ghost in the Shell. I would like actively study his fight scenes. In volume 4 of Appleseed, like the Dark Horse mangas that they put out, which are very expensive now because they're out of print, but they're totally worth all of your money. They seriously are.
Okay.
They're like $75 each, but you should just do it. There's a knife fight, volume 4, that is transcendent.
Yeah.
And I would like actively, you know what I'm talking about. There's like, it's just insane, it's beautiful. So I would take from that, and one thing I found too, as far as like maintaining that energy, I found that when I would sketch, even just like thumbnailing out an image for a panel or for a fight scene, that there would be a lot of inherent energy in my first pass at it. And a little bit like musicians say, like, when you cut a track, a lot of times the first or second take that's like the best one, and then after like take 14 is just all terrible. Any way that I can preserve that kind of excitement in that first try, that has really helped me. So that manifests itself in a few ways. Being confident in my pencils and then being confident in my inks, which takes a lot of work, but it's possible. And then also like not being afraid to like shy away from reference at first, and just go with your gut. And then also whatever you can do to maintain the energy of those pencils and that initial idea. There's many ways you can do that, but that's kind of what I would say. Next. Yeah.
So you had previously talked about Superman and Batman being very intimidating to you.
Sure.
And then you wrote a marvelous short in Superman Red and Blue.
Thank you.
That utterly destroyed me. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about like what gave you the confidence to like approach the story and represent Superman in that way and in that short story specifically.
The same way that I had confidence to approach Green Leader. Like it was, I think the Superman Red and Blue story was like 8 pages. And you can just get in, say what you have to say, get out. You don't need to worry about the logistics of how you got there or how you leave. It's just there. It can just exist. And one of those treasures about short stories is like readers have to take you where you're at. Like there can be no, like, well, what about this? What about that character? It's like boom, boom, done. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, like, I hope you can appreciate that moment that you've captured in that story has added to Superman's canon in a very powerful way.
Thanks.
Like when I think about that moment, like coming in and going out, like that nugget exists alongside King's Up in the Sky.
I really means a lot. Thank you very much. Green shirt.
Yes. First of all, I'm going to say I'm obsessed with the Powerbomb.
Thank you.
Yeah!
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And obviously, like a lot of influence from like Ultraman and Ninja Fan. What kind of research went into that? Like, what was your favorite part about it? Because obviously, creating your own pro wrestler is pretty fun.
Yes. Yeah.
What specifically, about pro wrestling and specific kind of pro wrestling organizations spoke you to create that story in that world? And then what was your favorite part about like the research, or what sort of research you do going into it?
Great question. One of my first thoughts of even making a story like this was actually I was listening to an interview by the head of AEW, Tony Khan, that said that when he was like in middle school and high school, he'd make his own wrestling organizations, and he'd either make his own wrestlers up or pull his favorite wrestlers from like TV that he would watch, and he'd make his own storylines in his notebook, and he'd book it like himself, like, and he'd like write storylines that would continue on. I was like, this is kind of like what comics do. I can make my own wrestling promotions, Death Life Pro Wrestling. Why don't I do that? So that was the first kind of like, oh, this could be really fun. And as far as specific wrestling promotions, the promotion that got me into wrestling in the first place was New Japan. Then specifically when doing research, I looked to a lot of the 90s stuff, like All Japan, Pro Wrestling with Misawa and Kobashi, anything where they were still allowed to throw streamers into the ring when wrestlers would walk in. For those of you who are not into wrestling, Japanese pro wrestling does not allow people to throw anything into the ring anymore. But back in the 90s, you'd have these superstars that walk into the ring, Misawa, and then they would just like, thousands of streamers, like, that the fans would throw in. It's like the most amazing visual. And it's just like with the grainy like film footage, like the VHS tapes copied and copied and copied and then put on YouTube. It has this aesthetic that is so inspiring. And like the kind of like really still stuck in the 80s soundtrack for all of the Japanese wrestlers that come out. Kobashi. I'm not doing it justice. But when US Steel Rose walks out for the first time, that is exactly what I was trying to channel.
Yeah.
So, next. Yeah.
Piggybacking off of the action scenes type thing, I just feel like your action scenes and pacing in comics are so like one-to-one, moment-to-moment, and cinematic, whereas like in a lot of other comics, it's just like you get a snapshot of Hulk hitting fucking whoever, whatever. Sorry, I shouldn't swear.
It's all good.
Freaking whoever. And in your comics, it seems like it's so that first of all, the camera shots are so cinematic. You'll pull out new scale and stuff, but also the flow of it from page to page. 4 pages will be an action move to action move comic, right? It's like two martial arts fighting. So I just wanted to know if you can get in the process a little bit. Like, are you thinking about it in your head to visualize the shots first? Is it thumbnailing ideas out and then figuring out which ones look coolest? Or like, how do you get to that stage where it's just like one fight scene?
Well, it was one way before I did wrestling comic. When
Yeah.
I did a wrestling comic, it changed. So I'll get that quickly. With like Wonder Woman has to fight Superman. I'm like, well, what am I gonna do here, right? Anything to kind of get away from just punch, kick. So like a slap, that's kind of fun, you know. So Wonder Woman slaps Superman. That was a lot of fun. And in Wonder Woman Dead Earth, when she does slap Superman, all of you reading it can know I drew that slap like 4 or 5 times before I got it right, maybe more. So I sweat in that slap. And when doing A Powerbomb, you know, there's like 10 pages where the script would literally say fight. Next page, fight. And it's time to thumbnail it. Here I am sweating. Like, I guess I need to make this cool. So I would just kind of build off these kind of like moments that were really exciting for me to draw and that I know that people would enjoy seeing. Like a cool move, let's say in pro wrestling, or like a big tope suicida or whatever. I build to those, and I have these kind of moments that I hook myself to, and all the visuals would kind of go to these here's like that first move, then the move is getting bigger.
Yeah.
And here's the biggest move, and then here's someone crashing into a table. And so on. Next.
Yes.
Obviously, as a writer, you write for yourself.
Sure.
As an artist, do you think you would ever get to a point where you would want to write something for another artist to draw? Would that interest you at all?
I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
I think the thing I like the most about your work is, I mean, there's obviously the big, like they're fighting God.
Yeah.
But for me, like A Powerbomb is about characters. I mean, how do you ultimately fit it all together?
I don't know.
because for A Powerbomb, it's that last panel that we will talk about.
Sure.
But that's what the story's about.
Yeah.
It's not about the big things.
I guess what I'll say is I try and really adhere to keep the simple, stupid vibe. Like when I write, it's like as simple as I can possibly write. And if the character has a really good reason to put themselves in danger, and I follow that to the end, usually that will help me write the end. And then specifically with the ending of Do a Powerbomb, I didn't rewrite anything, but like I had that final 4 pages written like for at least a few months, and I would just go back to it week after week and just kind of like think away and just make sure everything was perfect, which I don't not usually do, but kind of like you said, it all hinges on that end moment, and I just had the luxury of being able to kind of, I had the story in my head, and when I finally wrote the ending, it was right, and it just needed a little bit of nuance. When I was writing issue 7, when I started the script for page 1 of issue 7, I didn't really know how I was going to visually or get to that end, and it wasn't until like I was actually writing it hit. And even then, I would like be taking out sentences, putting in sentences, and I'm constantly changing. So I don't usually do that, but I did do that for this one. I think it shows. I think we have time for a few more. How are we doing on time? 2 minutes. I got one more. Red sweater.
Your stories, like in Murder Falcon and Powerbomb, there's always this really very powerful like narrative force driving us like from beginning to end.
Sure.
But in that process, you create these really amazing worlds that are just fully fleshed out. Do you ever feel tempted to go back to them and kind of explore what's happening to some of the side characters or the mythology of those worlds? And I guess what I'm really asking is Rocket alive? Like, is he? Because that's been bothering me ever since I read that. Pizza Man is so sad.
He's referring to a tag team that takes place in Do a Powerbomb, where they're in the wrestling tournament, Do a Powerbomb called Pizza Party. I'll go into their origins. Pizza Party, the raccoon, is from one of my favorite children's books called Pizza Party, where a raccoon steals pizza. And then Pizza Man is actually a character from David Cho, who let me use it. He has a character named Pizza Man that shows up in the Cho Show a bunch. He has an Instagram, and he's a big fan of my work, and so made an art trade. He was doing Beta Ray Bill sketches, and I wanted one. He's like, "I'll give it to you, but you have to put Pizza Man in your comic." So I was done. And Rocky's totally fine. He's eating pizza right now. Thank you, everyone, for being here. 1 minute.